concept?
Well, a lot of that came out with the DAP that was very prevalent during the Vietnam War, where the brothers were trying to connect and hold together. And as you saw in the film, I mean, we did different types of DAP that showed where we had served, what parts of the country we had been in, but it was also a way just to connect. And Spike was very insistent that we got that across. But I have to say, though, that after running around in the jungle with those guys and spending the couple of weeks we had for military training and everything like that, we developed a brotherhood amongst ourselves that I feel you could start to feel the brotherhood and the love, and that went into the film, and we were able to get that point across.
It's rare, though, that to see that sort of connection, especially among older black men in movies. I really can't think the last time I really saw that. I mean, heck, it may have been the Robin Harris character, Sweet Dick Willie, and other cats on the corner in Do the Right Thing. I mean, you just don't see it.
Yeah, and it was kind of nice to be able to show that, older black men getting together, living, having a good time, still having dreams, still loving life and things of that nature. You never ever see anything like that. And I was glad to be a part of that, just to be able to show that. And then when you look at everything today, a lot of the film and that black brotherhood and older men and things like that getting together, all of that has been kind of lost. And when we do the film, smacks people in the face that, yeah, they do matter.
Well, they certainly do matter, and I think to tell the story from the perspective of these brothers, which you rarely see when it comes to Vietnam era films, and it's like so much for African Americans, where all these stories have been told over the years, yet our particular perspective gets left out, or we're simply a bit player in somebody else's storyline.
Right. And that's what I felt with all of the documentaries. The one thing I kept seeing in a lot of the documentaries was when Sammy Davis Jr. went over to sort of calm things down. I think Nixon had sent him over. And to me, that was very telling, just how tone deaf they were at that time, about how disproportionate it was, what was happening in the country at that time. So many African Americans on the front line fighting and dying at such a larger percentage than African Americans in the country. I think it was like maybe 11% at that time, and yet you had about 30% on the front lines and dying. So you just didn't. And then when you see these documentaries, none of that is talked about. You don't see any of that. So it was nice to be able to represent that and let people know that African Americans did serve in the Vietnam War. And at the same time, I was very thankful they just didn't get me.
Did you reach out to other brothers who served to really sort of get a understanding? Did you reflect on classmates or family members as well who served?
I had a lot of memories of the guys who did serve, because at that time you saw a lot of guys coming back. They would leave one way and come back totally different, totally disillusioned, and then having to deal with all the problems in the country. But when we got over to Vietnam, there were some expats who we spoke with, guys who had gone over to the Vietnam War and stayed, and that was very it was very emotional for me to listen to their stories and what was going on and all. And so by the time we started shooting, I had a very, very good idea as to who these guys were.
As I look at the different characters, your characters seem to be the most level-headed, didn't necessarily show lots of external drama and issues. It is as if you were able to get through that and not have a lot of that weighing down on you in terms of how the storyline set it up.
Yeah, and it was interesting because when we started shooting, I mean, you know, you saw with Delroy's character, Clarke's, Norm's, and then you had this, you sort of had this other brother who was just, you know, he still had his faculties intact. He didn't have all of these issues and things like that. So when we go back to Vietnam, you sort of see it right up front, especially once we go to the club and everything like that. That, you know, he's that guy who, you know, I'm there to have a good time and, you know, do what we have had to do and everything like that. But in the beginning of the movie, I've already got a drink. I'm checking in at the counter, and I've got a drink already.
Yeah.
And I was dancing with a drink, and I didn't spill a drop, you know. So early on, you knew exactly who this guy was, and he was supposed to be the youngest. Had lied his way into the military, and he was part of that group. He was part of that brotherhood. And right off the top, you know, I exposed him as to who he was.
Yeah, no, it was clear because I told when I asked Clarke Peters, I said something tells me that Isiah was the constant comic relief on screen and off shooting his film.
I didn't plan it that way, but in looking back on it, I sort of was, you know. It was kind of like when things started to get a little too heavy, you know, I had to come in and lay something down to kind of pull everybody back to reality, you know. And I thought that was good. It sort of showed that, you know, one of the things Spike said right before we left for Thailand and Vietnam, he says, look, I don't want four brothers who are the same. And I knew Delroy, I knew Clarke. I didn't really know Norm, but I did get to know him. But I remember thinking to myself, you cast this perfectly because we are all different. And that came out in those characters where you had four different guys. And one of the things that bothers me a little bit about film is that sometimes when you see African Americans, you know, they're all the same. And it was nice to be able to show a little bit of diversity in character and who we were, that we're not all the same. Some of us come from different parts of the country, Midwest, South, West Coast, East Coast. But it was nice to be able to represent that. And I thought that came out great in the film.
Well, and when you talk about that comic relief, when you talk about you know, those moments, I mean, the reality in real life, we all need levity. Life ain't that serious all day, every day, and it's great to have that person in your life who at any moment might crack a joke, might make light of something, might start cracking on you, playing the dozens. I mean, levity is needed even in life.
Yeah. And the thing is that that's where, I mean, you know, usually when you see films, you know, it gets serious and it stays serious. But as the audience watching it, as an African American watching it, I know that's not real. I know somebody, excuse me, somebody is going to say something, even in a desperate time, somebody will say something that will almost make you laugh. And I had those little moments in there where no matter what the situation was, I could always find the opposite of that. And to me, that is what life is all about.
Absolutely. All right, so first of all, I didn't understand. Where in the world did your signature line, where did that come from? And of course, I'm watching the movie going, I know I'm going to hear it.
Well, a couple of things.
It's like your line. Your line is that damn camera of Spike Lee's. That like we all waiting for it. We know it's coming.
you and everybody else, even Spike. About halfway through shooting, Spike said, I haven't heard that. What's going on? And I told him, I said, because Spike had told me, he says, look, find a place where you want to put it. You decide what you want to do. And I appreciate the fact that he trusts me enough to bring it in. He never told me exactly where. He just trusted that I would find a spot for it. And I'm sort of like, well, I don't want to just throw it out there. I want to find that one spot where the audience is going to agree with me and say, you got a point there. He's not going to give you $1 million. Shit. That kind of a thing. So about halfway through, Spike said, I haven't heard. I said, no, I got a spot for it. And that's when I did it. But it was later in the movie. But that all came from the 25th Hour, the first movie that I did with Spike. That's when I first did that. And then 6 films later.
Was it spontaneous then? Or was it in the script?
No. It was when I had gone to audition for the 25th Hour. I was chatting with Spike, and we were talking about baseball. We were talking about the St. Louis Cardinals when they had Curt Flood and Bob Gibson and all these guys, Lou Brock, and then we started working a little bit on the script of the 25th Hour, and I did that. And Spike said, do that again. I did it again. He says, you need to keep that. He said, it's the way you do it. And so he cast me in that film, and I found a spot to do it in the movie. And then I started doing it in The Wire, and the rest is history.
So Spike Lee was the one who said, write that, take it. Yeah. He said, you need to keep that. And he had me do it twice in the 25th Hour. And then once I started writing it in for The Wire, that's when it really blew up. But up until that point, I was just doing it in Spike Lee films. And then they started writing it in The Wire. I started doing it in The Wire, which, again, I thought it worked very well. And the rest is history. But I'm glad people enjoy it enough that, it makes people smile. And I figure, if I can make people smile, great. Well, the thing about it is that, look, there are a lot of actors. There are a lot of people out there who have done films and television, but there are very few who sort of have this signature thing, this that speaks to them. Now, there are some folks out there. I remember when I interviewed Richard Roundtree, and he told me that for the longest he resented the Shaft character because people would come up to him, and his dad pulled him aside. He said, son, it's a whole bunch of people who nobody remembers.
Yep.
He said you might want to embrace that thing. And he said that moment from his dad, what his dad told him, completely changed his perspective on that moment. So now, do you have people who walk up to you in real life and just want you to say it, and then you like, okay, I'm about to cuss this person out, they just want me to do it?
No, I have a lot of people. Sometimes it's hard for me to get up and down the street without people stopping me and wanting me to do that. I've had people want me to call their wives and do it on both the phone, on their phone, things like that, And that gets a bit much. If I'm not in a hurry going somewhere. What's that?
Yeah, no, go ahead.
If I'm not in a hurry going somewhere, I usually accommodate them because I realized early on I was going to have to live with that. That was going to be a part of me no matter what. And again, I saw the joy that people would get out of it. I mean, I've had some people. There's been a couple of people. I thought they were going to pass out. I would be like, whoa, 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 take it easy. You know, I know it's me. It's just a word, but take it easy. You know, but you know, I embraced it early on because I knew if I didn't embrace it, I mean, I'd be ready to, you know, slit my wrist or something like that because people do it all the time.
Well, I got to agree with you on the phone thing. I'll say that's probably, look, I'll take a million selfies. I'll speak to people. I'll do all sort of stuff. The one thing that does sort of drive me crazy is when somebody will thrust a phone. Hey, can you speak to my mama? Can you speak to my friend? Can you speak to my wife? And now what I've done is I'll actually take somebody's phone and I'll shoot a video and say, hey, send this to them. That way, you know, I can knock it out, you know, in 10 seconds. But when you're like, it's a group and they're like, but hold on, hey man, it's my homeboy. And I was like, what up?
That
does get a little different.
And also in this day of coronavirus, you know, a lot of that's going to have to change.
Oh yeah, no. Trust me. If I start snatching folks' phones, because see, the other thing for me, Isiah, folk take too long with these phones. Like this ain't a photo shoot. I'm not staying there for a minute. So man, I'll be snatching phone, click, hand it right back. So I'm gonna be gloved up once we get back out. As you better here, snatch your phone. I stand 6 feet back, and I'm gonna hold the phone up.
Yeah, really, because I'm like, you know. I'm in that you know group where you know I can catch it, so I don't want to catch any of that.
Well, you black, we all in that group.
Yeah, you know, that's your underlying condition, you know.
Yeah, the underlying condition is black. That's what it is. One of the things that you know, going back to the film here, and. At first, it was a little bit jarring, but I picked up on it. When Spike had y'all playing yourselves when you were younger, did you immediately understand that, or did you say, "Wait a minute, what a younger us"?
No, it was very quick, and we never ever really talked about it again. Spike said, no, you're going to play yourselves. And that was it. Nobody ever gave it much thought. I really didn't think too much about it until the film came out and people started talking about it. It was never a big issue. It was like, you know, Spike said we weren't doing it, so be it. And, you know, I mean, it's... you know, it is, as you said, can be kind of jarring, but in some ways I kind of liked the fact that it was sort of jarring because you saw throughout the whole film, you never could get too comfortable or too far ahead because Spike always had something that was going to pull you back in and say, wait a minute, you know, we're still here trying to tell a story. We're still here trying to make you realize what was happening back then. And so just when you got a little too comfortable, boom, something would happen. And I sort of felt if we had tried to make ourselves look younger or bring in some other actors, I think that would have just imploded on us. And it was like you had to take that dream with us back into time and see us as ourselves and not get too distracted by the makeup or trying to look younger. Let's keep our foot on the gas. Let's keep telling that story, and let's try to get our point across.
The Delroy Lindo character, obviously suffering from significant PTSD trauma.
I see ghosts, y'all. I see ghosts.
And man, I can tell you those scenes where a Vietnamese person would just set him off. I'm watching it, and I mean, he that thing was real. He did an amazing job. I mean, you felt that PTSD, that trauma, just watching it.
And what's interesting was playing it. I had to play it like, what's your problem, man? You know, like,
Right.
you know, what's the deal here? You know, settle down, calm down, you know, get over it, you know, which is sort of what we did back then. You know, you didn't have all these terms and things like that. You were just, you know, you just a brother with some problems, you know, and you got to deal with that. You got to deal with that stuff. You can't be sitting around here, you know, because the man, big deal. So the man's got a chicken, you know, and you don't want to be around a chicken, or he's got this, or he's got that. And the way Delroy played it was just brilliant. I mean, but it's as an actor playing off of that, you know, you never can let that bring you out of who you are and bring you down. You've got to stay on top of it and sort of deal with it in a very realistic way. But he was outstanding, for lack of a better word.
I haven't asked the other your fellow castmates this, but from your perspective, what was the one unique or great thing about each of them that you got to see? So let's start first with Clarke Peters.
When you say unique thing, you mean as far as character or person?
No. Anything in terms of how they played the role or just them in real life. That just one thing that really stood out or struck you about either him, the person, or the character he played, or how he actually went about his work. Anything like that?
Yeah, I would say with Clarke, it was very. He was in a very sort of mellow kind of trance, you know. He was very smooth about everything, you know, and it was impressive, you know, because I thought, you know, and with all this heat and everything over here and all these flies and mosquitoes and things like that, that's going to be hard to maintain. But I was impressed the way, you know, Clarke was sort of going to this zen, you know, and, you know, he would start to, you know, Spike would say cut, and Clarke would start to meditate, and I was in front of the fan saying, man, I got to cool down, you know. I can't be out here in this damn heat. No.
Well, I think, well, maybe he was doing this. Maybe he was thinking cool thoughts.
Yeah. He had to be thinking something, because I was like, I couldn't get to the fan fast enough. I knew if I sat in front of the fan, the mosquitoes wouldn't come because the wind was too heavy. So, and you know, then Spike would say, okay, let's go. And it's like, okay, yeah, let's go. Because we were always ready to go, because we had to just get the hell out of there, especially before the sun got overhead. Norm was cool. He was cool. He had to, you know, get the stuff down with the pigeon toed and everything like that. So he had his thing that he was working with. And Delroy, I mean, that PTSD, I don't want to say it transferred off screen, but he was in the moment and stayed in the moment also, you know. They were very, all of the actors were just very disciplined, and that was, it's hard to say, but I think when you have that kind of discipline, and I think Spike really knew that I know these guys, I've worked with these guys, I know how disciplined they are. So when we get over there, no matter what, they're going to pretty much do what they have to do. I'm not going to have to sit around and worry about them. And that's pretty much what you got. And even with my character is
right.
Yeah.
Go ahead, finish. Go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, I was saying, even with my
character,
there was a discipline to not get bogged down, because all of that other stuff can kind of rub off on you. Whereas, I've got to make sure that I don't get bogged down except for when I have to be here and there.
How did you get the role? Because it seems as if Spike just pre-selected every one of you.
Yeah, he pretty much did. Spike knew exactly who he wanted. He knew exactly what you were going to do, and he called me up. He asked me what I was doing. I told him I was across the street doing my laundry. Just getting ready to put my clothes in the dryer. I always wish I could say I'm doing something else, like, oh, I got this, this big thing going on here, I'm there, but, no, I'm at the laundromat. I'm just getting ready to put my clothes in the dryer. I'm trying to get some quarters to get some, I got to get some quarters to get some bounce, but what's up, So sad, so sad. I mean, you can take the boy out of Indiana, but you can't take the Indiana out of the boy. And
all right, so
but that's he called me up. He started telling me about this movie that he was making. I told him, I said, look, I'm leaving for Japan, but I was just going to Japan just to visit some friends. And I said, I'll read it on the plane and get back to you. Well, I did read it on the plane, and I think I called him from the airport and said, this is fantastic. And that's, he said, I want you to play Melvin. And I said, okay, I'm ready to go. I'll be ready.
That's I was doing laundry. Okay, I was not expecting that one.
I know,
Clarke did want me to ask you,
but it's typical, I always say, why does my shit always got to be raggedy, But
but I got to do one thing. Clarke said, I need to ask you. He said, I need you to ask Isiah about that damn bicycle.
That goes back to me doing my laundry. When we were in Baltimore, everybody had a car. Driving around Baltimore to the set, I had a bicycle. And it always seemed whenever I was on the bicycle, I would run into Clarke on that. I would run into Clarke on the bicycle. Clarke would be in a car. I would be on the bicycle. One time I fell on the bicycle. I heard a horn honking, and it was Clarke. So fast forward this had to be maybe like 6-7 months later. I was in New York City, and I heard the car honk, and it was Clarke, and I was on a bicycle. And so he's been giving me shit about that that's what he makes. So he's always teasing me, He thought I was going to have a bicycle in the jungle, and I said, no, I left the bicycle at home.
So wait a minute. So y'all bumped into each other in New York, and you happen to be on a bicycle, and he's in a car.
Yes, yeah. He's in a car, and he just laughed because he always gave me shit about being on that bicycle down in Baltimore, especially when I fell on it. And it seemed like he was right there. And he said, why don't you just get a car? I said, no, man, I got this bicycle. And then about 6 months to a year later, I'm in New York City. I'm on a bicycle. I hadn't even used a bicycle since then. But I got on that bicycle, and there's Clarke. Like he was waiting for me.
That is absolutely hilarious. That's funny.
That's why I say it goes back to me doing my laundry. I'm on a bicycle. Spike calls me. I'm in the laundromat doing my laundry, trying to get some quarters to buy some bounce so I can put some fabric softener in. And it's like, old school all the way, man.
Last question for you, man. Obviously this is a dramatic role, but is there this wild, outlandish comedy you would love to do? I mean, I could just, you know, I see a lot of these comedies out here, and like I said, I see some of the roles. A lot of times you're playing a police officer, stuff along those lines. I just think, again, and hell, it might be Man on the Bicycle. I don't know, but
or I own a laundromat.
Right. Right. Anything like that in your future?
You know, I never know. I never know. One of the things I really just enjoy doing, I enjoy doing all of these different characters. And I got to say, I never try to make them, you know, funny or anything like that. But I think the humor sometimes comes out of the reality of a situation or a moment. Because I always, you know, used to think of myself as being a very serious guy. But I think the more serious you get, the funnier you get. So I just enjoy playing, you know, a variety of different characters. And that's one of the things I really love about it.
All right, well, look, I can only envision, all of a sudden, a movie where you're the owner of a laundromat and dealing with some badass kids who coming up in there and all kind of stuff. To me, it would be 24/7 comedy. Yeah,
well, you know, I own a laundromat and I have a bicycle that I deliver other people's laundry in New York City. we might be on to something.
I'm going to have to call some of my friends who are comedy directors and run that by them. Tim Story, Reggie Huntley, let's holler at you.
There you go.
Isiah, we'll do that. Isiah Whitlock, man, it's great. It's a great to chat with you again. The Five Bloods was an absolutely fabulous film. I hope people check it out. And it really was, man, intense and great to see the four of you do your thing on screen.
Thank you. Yeah, it was. You know, I think the film is just fantastic, and with all the hard work and everything that we put in, it really paid off.
All right, man. You take care and stay the hell out those laundromats.
All righty, man. You take care.
All right. Have a good one.
All righty, man.